Hi everybody, good morning. This is Jean here, Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I'm sitting at my computer today going over some of the questions that I had suggested that my viewers ask me to whatever, quilting related, sewing related, my family related, whatever, and if I could answer them. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a little segment, my Ask Me Anything. There is a playlist for that, some of the questions that I've actually put a small video to, if I can demonstrate what you're asking. But a couple of these I just was going through and I thought, well, I think I can just answer them fairly quickly. So if you bear with me, going back a couple weeks or so, Cindy West asked a question. Here's a question about pressing the seams. When do you know to press seams open or not? Now, that's interesting because in quilting, somewhere along the way, quilters have been told or advised or taught to press to the dark side. Now, what that means is when you're quilting is all about joining fabrics, some light, some dark. And it came about along the way that if you pressed your seam to the dark side, it obviously wouldn't show through like a shadowing on the lighter side. So that was sort of a rule of thumb. Also, when quilting, or I suppose seamstress or garment making came about, seams were always pressed open. Now, 50 years ago, or however long ago, a seam allowance was 5/8 of an inch, as opposed to the 1/4 of an inch for quilting. Now, why that transpired is to garment sew, if you're putting a seam in and it's only a 1/4 of an inch, well, that wear and tear on that seam is going to be greatly, impacted. Whereas a 1/4 inch seam in quilting, which is a flat unit, which is all overlapping each other and gets quilted even more when it's stitched over with the actual quilting, is a stronger, easier stitch, I think, something like that. So it makes sense that quilting uses a smaller seam allowance. But when quilting, well, it's been around forever, but like when batting, or in another country they call it wadding, came about, there's all sorts of batting on the market, bamboo and wool and poly and cotton and blends and all sorts of things. But batting, I remember 30, 40 years ago, batting was more just like of a polyester, like a fluffy, almost like a fiber fill type of thing. And if you would use that, which is still available, and you press your seams open, there was a chance of the batting actually what's called bearding through a seam. It would sort of migrate up and out of a seam that was pressed open, if you think about it. Those little tiny pills of batting would come out of an open seam. Pressing the seam also to the side after it is set. Now, you know how important it is that I reiterate about ironing, about pressing. Setting your seam. You sew your seam, you go to the ironing board and you set it. You set that seam and it sinks the stitches into the fabric. Well, after you set your seam and you press it to the side, to one side, whether if that's dark or whatever it would be, that seam is much stronger, if you think about it, as opposed to an open seam, because you have two seams going that way as opposed to one going each way when you press it open. So pressing to the side in general will make your seam stronger. Now, if you were again, two schools of thought. If you're perhaps constructing say a 4-patch, then you press your seams to one side and then the other to the other side, that would make a good place to nest your seams, one going one way, one going the other way, and getting a nice crisp intersection there. But by all means, if you wanted to reduce the bulk, then you would press your seams open and match the seam allowance, if you can understand. So pressing it open or to the one side depends really on what you are constructing. If you're constructing a quilt block with many intersections, then it's best to press your seams open. so as to reduce that bulk in that intersection or that intersection. The whole bearding, batting issue has really not gone away, but gotten a lot better with the quality of batting now. So if seams are pressed open, perhaps the chance of your batting sort of pilling up to the top after a while is reduced a bit. But that's all. I mean, there's tons. And again, the whole, do you press or do you iron? You know me, I iron. But so many people people are like, no, you press up and down. Obviously, when I iron, I'm very careful not to stretch the cotton. Cotton stretches a lot. I think that's the whole point. You're warping your fabric when you iron it. Well, I mean, I'm ironing, like I'm not warping it. Oh, another thing, you do know how important ironing is to me, but also using either a spray, either a water bottle or a light starch or a sizing. I think that's extremely important. I think even more important than pressing your seams open or not is whichever, setting a seam and then pressing it so well, ironing it really, really well as you go along in your project. If you think, oh, I can do all my pressing of my seams at the end, it's going to look okay, but it's not going to look fabulous. So Cindy, I hope that answered your question. Yes, another question is, do you have a video on how to quilt on my Juki? I have tons of videos on how to quilt. Again, I think if you just go to my my homepage, I guess it would be, and the search button at quilting or free motion quilting, yeah. What else? What thread do you normally use? That's a good one. Again, so many people say, oh, my machine is very picky. I don't know if that's true or not. I think that what that means is perhaps inferior threads. This is from Marla. Hi, Marla. Create more lint. And of course, that will bung up your machine in your bobbin area, in the workings of your machine, and that's not good. Somebody else had said, so I tend to use like an Aurifil thread, which is very expensive, but it goes a long way. I like Aurifil threads. I get mine on Amazon. As you know, I quilt mostly with white threads. Isn't that interesting? Most quilters use like a smoke or a tan. I use white. Isn't that interesting? But I think the quality of the thread perhaps makes a difference to the machine itself. There's Glide, there's Superior, there's YLI or something. There's King, all sorts of different threads. And perhaps the more expensive ones are better quality. I do like Aurifil myself, but I like Coats and Clark's I get from Joann's cheapo thread, which I have used. I also like Connecting Threads thread. Their essential thread. I like Connecting Threads, and it's not expensive either. So I don't know, whatever you can afford and whatever your machine likes. Oh yes, here's one. I hope I had made a video of Maxwell and I. We were not having a very good day a couple videos ago. Oh, let me tell you, I was just so annoyed. Let me just tell you that 3 times in about 10 days, I've had trouble with a card at a store. The first time I was with Walmart with the insurance card, that was a bust. That was a disaster. The second time was we videoed it with Maxwell and I at the supermarket with his insurance card. Maxwell handled that like a champ. Wonderful, wonderful. I came home and cried. Excuse me. And the other day I went down to Kohl's. Now I have what's called Apple Cash. This is a bit of an aside, but the question was, let me just get to that point. The question was, can you share the quilt pattern of the quilt that you were cuddling with? I was huddled under a quilt, and that was my coin quilt, and I do have a video on that. I think it's way back. I think it's episode 66 or something like that. There is a video of how I made that with a bunch of charm squares. Maybe I'll try to link that quilt, because quite a few people have asked. But my day, I went down to Kohl's, which is not too far from here, and I had this what's called Apple Cash. Now I had $480 in Apple Cash. I don't know how it got there because I've never used it. Okay, I don't use it. I use my debit card. Well, I also have a Kohl's credit card. I was buying some things for our daughter-in-law, and I had bought I bought myself a jacket which was 50% off. It was nice. So I had a few things. So I go up, and I don't want to put it on my credit card. I don't have any money on. I don't have anything on the credit card. Try not to use the credit cards. Use our cash, what we have. And I have this Apple Cash. I'm like, oh wow. Now I have seen Maxwell go up to a terminal and like hit the phone on the terminal. I don't know. And I don't know. Miraculously, you walk out with your goods, right? So I'm like, oh, I can do that. So I asked the lady, I said, do you have Apple Pay? I think that's what it's called. She said, oh, yes. I'm like, oh, great. So I have it all pulled up on my phone that there's $486 in my Apple Pay. There's the balance, right? So I think it was $160 or something that I had purchased after I got my Kohl's cash and my rewards. It was awesome because I had gotten a lot. And sure enough, I said, oh, to the girl, no, hardly anybody in the store, which was amazing. Hardly anybody in the store. One cashier, I said, oh, I don't know how to do this. Do you know how to? I don't know how to do it. I said, oh, okay, well, let's look at the prompts on the screen, right? So I put my phone on, and card declined. I said, oh, don't start with these stupid things. So I said, well, does anybody else? She said, I'm sorry. She was nice enough. She goes, I'm sorry. So I said, I don't know how to do it. I'm like, well, does anybody else? Because it's obvious I have Apple Pay. It's obviously there's money in it. There's obviously a trick to doing it. Is it just your store again? This is like 3 days after Maxwell and I had this disaster at the cash register. And of course, the inevitable after about 3 minutes, like, do you have an alternative means of payment? And I'm thinking, I do. I don't want to put it on my credit card. I just don't want to put it on my credit card. I have the cash here. So after about 4 attempts of clicking, tapping, doing, it didn't work. I got so, actually, you get so frustrated and so annoyed at these technical things, this technology, which is horrible, but that you can understand people losing their mind about it, right? But I always think, I mean, I've always told our boys, let's imagine that there's a hidden camera somewhere, and we're on that program. Like, what would you do? Like, am I going to lose my temper and be like a fool, look like a fool? It's not my fault. Everybody else are fools, but I'm going to stand here and have self-control and be pleasant, because I am being recorded. Obviously, that your every action in the world is being recorded, but like, it's not going to be used against me. I'm going to be pleasant. So I pulled out my Kohl's credit card. Okay, thank you. So I come home, I was so annoyed. I get in the car and I scream and I punch someone. No, I didn't. But you feel like it, right? Because it's like, this is the 3rd time in like 10 days. I'm like frightened to go to the store. So anyway, I come home and I'm like, Maxwell, what the heck? So he's like, he actually put the money, he said, get it out of Apple Pay, put it over here. So we did that. So now I have like $6 in my Apple Pay. So that was my little story. That wasn't a question. Oh, how do you make a tea cozy from a quilt or regular fabric? Again, I did make a tea cozy years ago, and I've made 2 of them. And actually, I use them every single day, our tea cozies. And I had sort of quilted the tea cozies that I had made, but it's just a pattern. It's just a pattern. I show how to do it, and then you either quilt it and then you bind it. So you could use an old quilt, and again, that's a lot of controversy. Like, oh, they're called cutter quilts. If there's a vintage quilt that is full of holes and beyond, by all means, they're called cutter, C-U-T-T-E-R quilts, and you can use them for all sorts of things, for beautiful patches or to make something smaller, or in this case, to make a tea cozy, by all means. So these are just a couple. Oh, this is a lovely one from Irish Lass. Thank you so much. How is Ian doing? He's doing so much better. Thank you so much. His blood pressure, they've upped the medication. His blood pressure's absolutely perfect. It was high. He had his little episode a couple months ago. He is off the statins. We read too much about that, so he's off the statins. He's going to be having another check up in a couple of months, but as of this moment, he's doing very well, and he feels very good in himself. Maxwell, I just wanted to let you know, has seen his new neurologist as the other day, and I'm telling you, it went well. It was swimmingly beautiful. She's extremely knowledgeable, gave them 40 minutes of her time, answered all sorts of questions, have sorted out his insurance, and has sorted out his prescriptions, which had been upped. He does have to go get a little bit more blood work to figure out his levels, if he's okay, but he is doing, and she was very pleased, he is doing very well as of this day. So yeah, thank you so very much for keeping Maxwell. The last year has been rough on Maxwell, not nice. His insurance, his health, but hopefully everything will be good. One more question, Ms. Dale. I did a video on the floral tattoos from Urban Elements, how to jazz up my sewing machine. You can see right there the pretty flowers. Do they peel off easily? I don't know. I have no idea. It's a decal, so I would think you'd have to like scrape off, because once they're on there, they're on. I mean, and it almost feels flush with the actual surface you're putting them on. So I don't know, Ms. Dale, if they peel off easily. And why would you want to peel them off if you just go into the bother of putting them on? But maybe they do, if you change your mind. But I would think you'd have to scrape them off. They're not a sticker. Somebody said they tried to use stickers to pretty up their machine, and stickers don't work. They glue and they all curl up and everything, and they peel off. But these rub-on decals, these are awesome. Again, that is a video that you want to check it out. Yeah, I have quite a few other questions, but again, I just wanted to say hello to you guys, to check in to see if you're all doing well. We have a winter storm coming over the weekend, and you know, we'll see how that goes. I like the winter, as you know, but wherever you are, stay warm, stay safe, and yeah, keep asking the questions, and I love to connect with my friends out there in YouTube land. All right, love from the Trueloves, everybody. Have a lovely day. Bye.